Okay, so we just want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Open Research Office session. My name is Marshall Brooks. I'm one of the clinical research facilitators, along with my colleague Alexis O'Brien, who's also in this meeting. Just a few things to go over. The session is obviously being recorded, and it will be posted online later for viewing, and you can send it to other people once it's on the website. Today's session is on plain language for researchers, and it's going to be presented by Andy Strohmeier. So Andy, whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Sure. Thank you, Marshall. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Welcome to my presentation on plain language for researchers. A quick little introduction as to who I am. I do work for the CTSI. I am the Special Populations Coordinator. The Special Populations Corps, which very recently merged with the Community Engagement Corps, is responsible for increasing the inclusion of special populations in research to improve health in our region. Special populations defined by the NIH are populations typically underserved in research and underrepresented in research studies, which include, but really are not limited to, pediatrics, older adults, people with chronic conditions, new Americans, and people who have been historically minoritized within the healthcare system. A little background about myself personally. I am formally trained as a high school and middle school English teacher. And I joined the CTSI almost 3 years ago after teaching for multiple years in both urban and suburban districts in Western New York. I have a big passion for language, a big passion for writing and storytelling. And I really think that there's a way to close the gap between the knowledge of the community and the knowledge of researchers. And I think that we can utilize language and storytelling in the right ways in order to close that gap. Let's just see if I can go to the next slide. There we go. The CTSI, just as a brief reminder, is an infrastructure-based institute with a vision to perform and enhance research in order to improve health and to reduce health disparities in our communities. The CTSI recognizes that those who participate in clinical research typically have better health outcomes. And with that in mind, we work closely with researchers and area communities to increase research participation, and we inform community members and allies of research outcomes that can have an impact on the health of our communities. I would like to take a moment just to introduce the CTSI's plain language team to you. The team consists of myself, Dr. Laureen Tumiel-Berhalter, Christopher Schobert, Ashley Regling, Keenan Gibbons, Grace McKenzie, and Marshall Brooks. This is really a multidisciplinary team of varied backgrounds of, training, past work history, past professions. Each of us really have a really unique skill set when it comes to plain language. So now the topic at hand. What is plain language? Plain language, which is also called lay language or sometimes plain English, is communication that your audience can immediately understand the first time they read it or the first time they hear it. The Plain Writing Act of 2010 defines plain language as writing that is clear, concise, well organized, and follows other practices that's appropriate to the subject or the intended audience. Just as a fun little trivia fact, that act is a federal law passed by the US government in order to help regulate and guide the way that laws were written. So while it doesn't necessarily apply to researchers, I'm sure you can still understand why that would be taken into consideration. So with this definition in mind, how do we make plain language and the plain language definition helpful for researchers? Put very, very simply, it's short words, short sentences, and short paragraphs. Just to break that down a little bit further, and this can apply to really any research materials, flyers, posters, abstracts, papers, any kind of recruitment materials or findings. Short words, you want to use 2 syllables or less whenever possible. That said, there really are some times when there are words that are longer than 2 syllables that you just can't get around. Words like allergy, for instance. That's a 3-syllable word. You can't do too much with expanding on that word or trying to make it a little bit simpler. So the word allergy, sometimes, with the extended syllable words, you just can't get around it. That said, things that you really can make work to improve the plain language of your research. Short sentences and short paragraphs. Those short sentences should be about 20 words or less. More often, the less words that you use in a sentence, the better, especially if those are short words themselves. And then short paragraphs, taking you back to that middle school, high school, learning how to write an essay. You want to use 4 sentences or less. That's how you're going to make it your paragraph as easily accessible for as many people as possible. Lastly, you want to aim to have your reading level be at around a 5th grade reading level, if not lower. At the absolute least, if you have your research and you're trying to present it to community, it needs to be under a 10th grade level. So now that we know what plain language means for researchers, why is it important? Plain language connects the researcher to the communities they serve, plain and simple. It decreases the esoteric nature of research. A greater population of people can understand it. It brings the researcher down from the ivory tower. And because it leads to an expanded audience, it allows for more people to participate in research in all facets. Expanding on that a little bit more, researchers absolutely must embrace plain language. It increases trust in the communities we serve. Through no fault of our own, researchers and scientists have really failed to deliver research and medical information in plain, easy to access and easy to understand language. You'll see that proven a few slides from now when I talk about a little bit about the data of some of the things that have been presented lately to the community. But really, it's through no fault of our own that we've failed. In a field that's as competitive as ours, we often have to battle for funding, for positions, or for other opportunities. It became really beneficial for us to speak in highly technical and esoteric language, where our knowledge and our expertise can shine at its brightest. And it's really worked out well for us. You know, we've published papers, we've been recognized in journals, we've won awards, you know, so on and so forth. In doing this, though, we've really left behind the communities we serve. I can point to those past research atrocities that we really all should know about, atrocities like Tuskegee and the Henrietta Lacks situation. But plain language itself, it increases participation in research, like I said in the last slide, especially for typically underserved population, for those children, for those older adults, for cultural and ethnic minorities, and for urban, rural communities, and even new Americans. It also increases community health. Research offers the newest and absolutely most novel and innovative treatments and interventions. Here is a very quick breakdown of some of the data from the communities living in the city of Buffalo. As you can see, like many urban populations, there's a disproportionate number of minoritized individuals, and there's a disproportionate number of those currently living below the poverty line. As you can see for Buffalo, 71.4% of people living in Buffalo have a high school education or lower. Even more astounding to me when I found is that 20% of people living in the city of Buffalo are considered college ready. Another advantage that plain language gives to researchers is that it increases interdisciplinary and team science. Plain language cuts through the technical language. Words, terms, phrases known by both disciplines, but you might have shared a shared word, but they have different meanings in each discipline, or, those words that you have in your discipline that other disciplines are just not familiar with whatsoever. As we all know, interdisciplinary research is on the rise. Funding opportunities very often favor team science collaborations. Team science is also improved with plain language. It really breaks down jargon barriers. And to just take you back to middle school just for a moment, I'd like you to consider one word. Consider the word ruler. In math class and science class, if you think of the word ruler, we all know what that is. It's got 12 inches on it. It equals 1 foot. You use it to measure things. In math class, you could use it, for a graph to make a straight edge, all that good stuff. That's what a ruler is. Everybody knows what a ruler is. However, what if we take that same word and apply it to history class? The word ruler in history class is a king, a queen, an emperor, a president, someone who rules a country. Understood, this might be a little bit silly, especially when we're talking about people with PhDs, multiple PhDs, but I really feel like it hammers the point home. Two people could be absolutely brilliant in their respective disciplines, but generate absolute confusion when discussing their field with other scientists because they both use similar jargon. Plain language, plain and simply, can cut through those barriers. Secondly, Star Wars syndrome. Take a look at these two phrases. You will pay attention, and pay attention you will. Those are the same syllables, same sentence length. The way we phrase our sentences can be very important, especially with new Americans. You could be a Star Wars fan, you could not be a Star Wars fan. But if you were a new American, that second phrase, the Yoda phrase, new Americans and people that speak English as a second language just would not be able to understand them. Which of these phrases is easier? I feel like there's a clear answer. For our next slide, here's a little bit of data. We think that we're being clear, but we are not. Here's a very quick analysis of 6 abstracts presented to the community. These abstracts were quick little 5 to 7 sentence paragraphs describing what the study did and what its findings were. Quick little breakdown of the chart. You'll see the Flesch-Kincaid and the SMOG. Those are 2 readability indexes. The readability percentage quickly breaks down what percentage of your intended audience would be able to understand the writing. So those readability indexes, both of those, the Flesch-Kincaid and the SMOG reading index, they both roughly equate to how many years of United States education you would need to be able to understand it. Now, keep in mind, you've got all those averages on the right-hand side. You got 15.8, 17, and 40.7%. Keep in mind, though, that data from a few slides ago, when I was showing you data from the community or from communities in the city of Buffalo, only 20% are considered college ready. 20%. Some of these, if you look at them individually, you would need almost a doctorate level education to be able to understand these abstracts. At the very least, you needed above a high school education, which nearly 30% of the Buffalo population has. That's just, it's just not good enough. You'll see our average is 15.8, which, you know, it roughly equates to you would have to have an undergraduate degree to understand some of these abstracts. It was enlightening when I came across this data. So now that we understand how we must embrace plain language as a tool to connect with our communities, let's talk strategies. First, I'd like to talk about a few readability indexes. I just talked about them in the slide past. Firstly, let's talk about the Flesch-Kincaid grade level. It's used very widely and it's very highly regarded for its reliability. It's been tried and tested for decades. This is the readability index that you can access on your Microsoft Word. So it's very easy to access. You just click on your spell check. And it will give you your Flesch-Kincaid grade level. The number, as I said earlier, equates to the American school grade level you would need in order to comprehend the material. It's suitable for the grading of a wide range of writing and all ages. You want to aim to have it be between 5 and 10 or lower for maximum readability. If you really want to know how it works, it is a formula. It uses math and it uses the syllables and words in your writing to analyze it. That's what the formula is down below. The SMOG readability index. I really like this one. It stands for the simple measure of gobbledygook. Again, these have passed the test of time and have been studied multiple times. This is actually widely accepted as a standard readability index for healthcare research. So I do really like this one, especially when it applies to our profession. It's also best for texts of 30 sentences or more. So if you're looking to test a paper, this is your readability index that you want to use. Once again, the formula is down below. It's a little bit more simple than the last one. It's 3 divided by the square root of the polysyllabic count of words that you have in your writing that you're analyzing. Some very quick tips for writing readable texts. Like we said before, aim for 5th grade reading level or lower. You want to make your sentences no more than 20 words long. You want to use words with 1 or 2 syllables whenever possible. Use words that are common in plain language when you can. Try to make paragraphs no more than 4 sentences long, and try to make the information as absolutely simple as possible. Additional details can be shared with the participant during screening or on the consent form if you have to dive into it. So just to show you a very quick example of what we're talking about here when it comes to applying these tips to some sort of reading material. Here's an example. Here's a flyer. This is for a pretty simple study. Participants are needed for a cognitive study. What will you do? You're going to complete questionnaires, do an NBAC memory test. You're going to play Tetris, and you're going to watch Tetris video for approximately 1.5 hours. It's got the location listed. It tells you how to get started by filling out a questionnaire and telling you that we'll schedule an appointment, gives you a website, and it lets you know an email for more information. All well and good, but I think we can do a little bit better. Here's what we did with our plain language team. I'm going to put them side by side in just a second. Again, it's the same study. So volunteers are needed for a memory study. In this study, you will visit the offense once for 1.5 hours, complete surveys, play video games, watch a video. Gives you the same information where you have to go. It's got the email, it's got the website. All the same information is on there. Some of you may even be wondering, what's the difference here? Let me show you this. So we applied it to the Flesch-Kincaid grade levels. The one on the left was a 9.5, which honestly is not that bad. It's under that 10 that you're aiming for. But once again, if you're aiming to hit the biggest audience possible, you want to make that a 5 or below. And that's what we did with the one on the right. We got it under a 4.9. So some of the strategies that we did. We used commonly used words, so volunteers instead of participants. Instead of cognitive study, we called it a memory study. You'll also notice that we filled out a lot of the negative space that was in the flyer on the left. That's a simple marketing tool. You want to try and fill up that space. We broke down that sentence into 4 very small sentences where we're using 3 words, sometimes a little bit more. But you can really tell the difference when you're applying it to that Flesch-Kincaid grade level. You're going to have people with 5th grade reading level being able to apply to be a volunteer in your study, whereas in the one on the left, you just weren't going to be able to do that. Some very quick resources. Keenan, who is on our plain language team, said something that really struck with me a few months ago. She said that we should all make an effort to become bilingual in plain language. And that's really how our team has worked moving forward. We're coming up with resources to help you as researchers, whether you're faculty, staff, students, even a community member, become bilingual in this plain language. Number 1, ask the nerds. Our plain language team is happy to offer consultation services. You can contact us at plainlanguage@buffalo.edu. We are here to help you. We're here to help you present your research to the community and to your colleagues in plain language so that it can be understood and accepted by a wide variety of audiences. There's a ton of materials that we can help you with. We got flyers, brochures, papers, presentations, abstracts. You'll notice on the right, this is a quick little Microsoft Word readability writing tips little paper that Grace McKenzie really spearheaded in putting together. It's a nice little 2-sided paper that allows you to see some of the tips that we've talked about today. It's posted online. It's on the CTSI's website and our recruitment resources toolkit under our plain language tab. Next up, quick little refresher about other consultations and other resources that the CTSI offers. For a general research consultation, please contact CTSI research@buffalo.edu. We can help you with a lot of stuff: advertising, marketing, IRB, flyer templates, boilerplate recruitment language, and much more. Like I said in the past slide, we do have a resources toolkit up on our website. It's got more than plain language on it. I think we're up to maybe 6 tabs or so now. worth of different kind of topics that we can help you with as far as tools go. We also help with online study listings, be it the PIR or clinicaltrials.gov, and there are other participant databases like the Community Engagement Team's Buffalo Research Registry that we can help you with. Lastly, before we can open it up to questions or comments or ideas, anything like that, just a reminder, our CTSI annual forum is on Wednesday, March 15th, starting at 12:30. It will cover a whole bunch of different things, but the forum will also include a panel discussion on plain language with comments from community representatives and researchers on innovative approaches to communicating research in an understandable way. Panelists include Kelly Wolford, who's the director of the Health Equity Office at the Erie County DOH, Veronica Meadows-Ray, who is a research team member and participant on the National Witness Project, Melanie Green, the chair and professor of communication, the College of Arts and Sciences, and also Lise Kaler, program director of kidney and pancreas transplantation, and then Jinjun Zhang, who is an engineer and professor in the computer science and engineering school at UB. He specializes in AI. So that does conclude our presentation today. Some very quick references on here, some opportunities for more information. You can Google those reading indexes, or really just look up readability indexes and they'll take you to some. The one that I really like is readable.com. Plainlanguage.gov will be very helpful. And so will that analyzemywriting.com. Gives you a nice little breakdown of how the readability indexes work. Lastly, I just want to thank you one more time for joining us today. A couple of things that our plain language team would like you to keep an eye out for. We have a novel AI that we're working on that can analyze existing research materials and can translate them into plain language. It will suggest changes and sometimes even spit out, a new flyer for you that's knocked down a few reading levels. We do offer future consultations. Keep an eye out for workshops. We will also have tutorials, YouTube videos on analyzing and improving the readability of your materials, and much, much more. So once again, thank you for attending. My email is right there at the bottom if you do have anything after this meeting that you wanted to talk to me about. Other than that, I would like to open it up at this time for any kind of questions, comments, or ideas that you might have had.
Thank you, Andy. There was one question in the chat. I'm not sure if it's maybe too specific, but it says, hello, thank you so much. Does CTSI provide us with example of plain language that we can use? For example, these terms, genetic disease, 50% chance of being in an experiment group.
Yeah, so that's something that we're working on right now, and we're hoping in the next, I would say in the next month or so, to have something up there. There are some glossaries floating around. I want to say that I think Wake Forest had a really nice glossary of how to turn some, that discipline friendly, I guess, language that's really esoteric and really specific, and it'll give you a definition, and then it'll also give you a plain language friendly term. So we're working on that. Tanya, thank you so much for asking about that. We are working on it. We'll get it up in that plain language tab, and I'll also make sure to write down your email so that I can send it to you.
Thank you so much. May I offer a suggestion?
Yes, please.
I know it's a lot of work, but if perhaps categorize them according to discipline, because they're common jargon that we use in nursing, in engineering, in medicine, etc. So I think it might be helpful for us as we move forward into team science to be able to navigate through that, because there's a lot of jargon that we're using. Yeah,
that's a fantastic idea. I think that the ones that I've seen floating around, and there aren't many, let me tell you, but the ones that I have seen floating around, it's almost alphabetical. So I do agree with you that if we can break those down by discipline or by category, that would be a really good idea. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you.
Yeah, great presentation. I found it very helpful. I'm
Thank you.
I'm Skylar. I'm a third-year PhD student in public health. Um, I was wondering about is there a tension between using plain language and also the publishability of manuscripts, for example? Like if you would using plain language undermine the likelihood of your manuscript being published in certain journals?
That's a great question. I might actually ask what Dr. Murphy might think about that. I think that there's obviously value in speaking with the discipline level of jargon. You're able to show off your knowledge and your expertise. That said, I would say that speaking with plain language will help you with some journals, but it might also hurt you with some journals. Dr. Murphy, I'm very curious what you might have to say about that.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Skylar. I think we have to be mindful of our audience too. And when you're writing for a journal, I think it's different from writing to try and reach community members. That being said, I think that we as scientists and writers write in obscure language, even to our discipline audience. So I think we should be paying attention to write clearly in our articles, but I don't think you should be aiming for a Flesch-Kincaid score, for example, of below 10th grade necessarily. I think you can use language that's appropriate for your discipline, but avoid jargon. I mean, even the journals are even saying that now. They don't want to see a whole lot of jargon. And I think one other thing that happens in scientific writing is these sentences that are run on and on and on. And so many of the scientific editors are saying, write in short sentences. Use your discipline language that's clear, but write in short sentences. So I think you adjust, to a certain extent, you adjust your writing for your audience.
Yeah, well said, Dr. Murphy. Thank you so much. One thing that I guess I can also add on to that is think about your intended audience. If your intended audience is to be published in a journal, it's not often community members that are opening, for instance, the JCATS journal. So if you're intending to write it so your fellow colleagues or other doctors in your discipline are trying to read it, you can aim for that. Your Flesch-Kincaid doesn't have to be below a 10. It can be in the 13 to 17 range. So just keep your audience in mind while you're creating your materials.
Andy, that was really good. And I'll say you spoke in plain language, so you practice what you preach. And
I try.
you in the beginning showed, high school graduation rate and high school ready, and struck by the difference in a lot of ways. And I've heard community partners say that people who graduate from the Buffalo School District are not always college ready. Do you have an insight into why that big difference? Only 20% of people are college ready, in spite of the fact that there are a larger number of high school graduates?
I think that goes back to I can really only speculate while giving maybe a little bit of insight as to, I was a teacher for several years. And while I didn't teach in the Buffalo City schools, I taught in the Niagara City schools. So I taught at Niagara Falls High School. It's very, I want to say it's very cyclical. And there's a lot of problems in city schools when it comes to suspension, when it comes to retaining good teachers, when it comes to, proper forms of student discipline, whether that's expulsion, suspension, all that good stuff. There's a lot of cyclical problems. And then it also always ties back to the systemic problems of systemic racism we have in our society and systemic poverty, especially in inner cities. So a lot of the not to get too political, but the No Child Left Behind stuff that it pushed kids along so that they were going from grade to grade, and so did the most recent one under one of the past two administrations that's slipping my mind right now. But they were really good at moving kids along from one grade to the next, but they weren't very good at making kids college ready. And that's obviously, everything's always magnified when you're talking about underserved communities, and that's especially underserved when you're going to an inner city, when you're talking about our city schools. Kids just have it worse. They have worse teachers, they have worse principals. The districts are usually bloated, but also bloated in the worst ways. So it's really systemic. It will take generations of hard focusing work to fix that kind of a problem. So while they're good at graduating kids, they're not very good at getting them college ready, because a lot of the time they're focused on just moving them along.
Thanks.
I have another question. I think it's related to, I guess, this broader issue of readability, and also, I guess, readability, plain language, and also being able to foster more interdisciplinary research. Do you think that all STEM programs should have a required English component that actually teaches how to write concisely and in plain English?
So I graduated from UB with an English degree. So I don't actually know enough about the medical school program. But actually, Skylar, you saying that they maybe don't have that was actually a little surprising to me. What I would actually say, Skylar, is that a lot of people with English degrees, such as myself, I have an English bachelor, could have also used that training. There's a lot of people that aren't very good at writing across multiple disciplines. So I put plainly, I would say yes. I'm actually a little surprised that doesn't exist. But maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's like a little micro credential on, writing good research, writing good plain language that we could come up with, something like that. So that's actually a really good idea, Skylar.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, in my experience, the issue for me at least has been that I've never taken a formal class on scientific writing. It's kind of, it seems like it's more informally taught by your advisor or your peers. And if I guess if some of the same issues are being passed down to you, then you're going to pass it down to the next generation of researchers. So I think that's kind of maybe an issue that's kind of baked into a lot of STEM disciplines.
Very well said.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Please.
Hi, I'm curious about the AI program that you are evaluating and perhaps looking to use to assist in this process. Can you talk a little bit more what we know and how we're going to use it, advantages and disadvantages? Thank you.
Yeah, of course, absolutely I can. So that AI, and I just want to go back to a previous page just so you can see his name. But the person that's actually speaking next month at our Plain Language Forum, the very last person on the list, his name is Jinjun. He is the person that is spearheading and came up with this idea for a plain language AI. And we're at the very, very beginning stages of it. So our AI has we're kind of approaching it with a two-prong approach, and this is the ideal product that we could hopefully come up with. So our AI is going to address two things. It's going to address translating technical jargon in writing to plain language friendly writing. And obviously that's going to be at the doctor level, and that's going to also apply itself to patients, to community members, all that good stuff. The second prong, which we are a little excited about, but that I think is going to take years and years to really perfect, is an AI that can be in the doctor's office during a meeting with a patient. And the doctor can speak however they want, and you will have that AI translating live into plain language to the patient, to the community member. So that was Jinjin's idea. We're working on it right now. The way it started, I don't myself have I don't know too much about AI, but Jinjin does. A brief little background on Jinjin is he used to work for IBM, and more specifically, if you ever watched the show Jeopardy and you remember that AI called Watson that used to wipe the floor with all of the contestants, he worked very hard on that project actually. So he knows a lot about AI. So in the early stages, what we're working on trying to get to that end product is we are taking a whole bunch of those research materials that are at those really high grade levels right now. We have a whole bunch of informed consents that a whole bunch of different faculty members gave to us. And so we gave them to Jinjin, and what Jinjin is going to do is feed them into his AI so that it can start understanding what these products look like. And then he's going to work along with his students in creating what they would look like if they were a friendly language. He'll also work with our plain language team. And then he'll feed them into the AI once again. And then that AI will then be able to compare the two and use that newfound knowledge that it learned to, talk about those first products we had, where if you have an informed consent, you can give it to this AI and it will create a new informed consent for you, or suggest suggestions for that informed consent to improve its readability.
Yes, thank you. I know Jinjin. We talked about other projects.
Okay.
So it's custom made from UB, not ChatGPT or
Oh no, this is going to be a
crazy bot out there.
Yeah, this is going to be a
you.
custom AI. Absolutely.
Do we have any other questions? I always say that, and then a couple more come in, so I don't want to cut anyone off.
What I will say while we're waiting, in case anybody wants to, type into the chat or speak up and ask any questions. If you do have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is also up on the website, so you should be able to reach me. You can also email plainlanguage@buffalo.edu. But if you think of anything, and I'm serious, not just a question about what we're doing, but if you have any ideas, like I said, if you have an idea and you're a student, you're a community member, faculty, staff, it doesn't matter who you are. Plain language applies to everybody. So if you have an idea and you want to throw it our way, even just in this meeting, I came up with a couple of good ideas that I think is worth addressing going forward. Please feel free to throw it at us. And we'd love to talk to you about it.
Well, yep. Do you have a question?
No, thank you.
Okay, so if no one else has any other questions, we want to thank Andy for your time today for the presentation. And then I must say, after this presentation, I'm going to be sending everyone a survey. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete, and they're really essential for many different purposes, for funding, for reporting, and for planning future sessions. We really want to hear your feedback. So if everyone can, I will be sending it directly after this. If everyone could take the 5 to 10 minutes to complete the survey, it would be greatly appreciated. And thank you for attending. Thanks, Andy. Everyone have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.